Welcome to Everyday Discipleship Every Day, where we discuss discipleship in the 21st century, guided by biblical discipleship, a Christian worldview, and individual needs, while focusing on discipling our children as well. I'm your host, Terry Hellard Brown, and we're so happy you're here with us today. We have a really special guest today. Kathi Lipp is joining us, and I can't wait for her to share with you today. If you have any questions or comments, you can put those on my blog post on my website, which is terryhellardbrown.com. We would love to hear from you. So let's join the conversation with Kathi. Today we have a special guest with us. Kathi Lipp has joined us to talk about her brand new book, Sabbath Soup, which I just love. So I can't wait for her to share with us. And as you know, as if you've been watching my blog and podcast, we've been talking a lot about hospitality and how to make connection with people. And this book deals with that as well. So, Kathi, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, friend, it's so great to be here. Thank you so much for having me on.
Always a pleasure. Well, I wanted to start by reading a quote from your book, and then we'll jump in and talk about some things. But I thought this was just so great. You have the Mark 2:27 scripture, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. And you say, because it was made for us, embracing Sabbath shifts a daily nothing special experience into a mysteriously divine one. We transform a time of renewal into a spiritual practice. We bring meaning to the smallest of routines. We elevate a simple meal to a sacred ritual of connection and gratitude. And those changes have nothing to do with what we wear, serve, do, or the social status of who we feed. It has everything to do with the state of our heart. I love that.
Mm, I'm so
So,
glad. That's how I feel around you. I feel well taken care of, well loved, and God God took humble meals, right?
right.
And so we get to do the same. We get to do things in the image of Christ. And that's why I love this idea of, the simplest of meals can be the holiest of spaces.
Really, yes. And it's such a time of an opportunity for connection and renewal and all of that. When I teach, I used to teach literature in high
Mhm.
school.
Yeah.
And one of the things we talked about is anytime you're reading a story, a novel or a short story, and they're having a meal together, it's really communion. And
Mm.
unless you've got vampires involved, then it's a whole other thing.
Good to know, the vampire exception. There we go.
Yes. It's a different kind of communion for sure. But but you
Boy,
watch.
the blood takes on a new meaning in that one, doesn't it?
Yes. But in the basic stories, the dinner table becomes a place of honesty, of revelation, and of connection. Every time you see it in a story, I would teach my students to look because you're going to find out something, the truth
Right.
about something.
Oh, that's so good. It's so true. Pashat said, unfortunately, I didn't hear her say this before I published my book because I would have loved to have included it. But God did not have to design us with a need for food, right? And
Right.
so, yes, you sit around those tables, and it's the one time where, for many of us, it's the one time when we're looking people in the eye.
That
And you're right, you get honest. You talk about things differently than you do even walking side by side with somebody.
That's true. Yeah. So, one of the things I wanted to talk about is you do call it Sabbath soup. And you make the point, and it goes right along with the scripture that the Sabbath was made for us, not us for the Sabbath. But some people say you have to have a certain time and a certain place and all these things, certain way of doing it. Would you explain your take on what you believe we're supposed to believe, how we should treat Sabbath? What does it
Yeah,
mean to you?
so I think I do not pretend to know the mind of God, but I feel like I know the heart of God. And I'm really grateful that my next door neighbor does not celebrate Sabbath on Sunday because he's a volunteer firefighter. And if he just said, I'm not gonna go fight that fire because it's the Sabbath. I would not have a home anymore. The Caldor fire changed everything for a lot of people, but I still have a house because my neighbor worked on the Sabbath, and I'm so grateful. I think we see legalism throughout the New Testament about why would you not rescue a sheep? I think about those things. My husband and I do primarily celebrate Sabbath from Saturday evening to Sunday afternoon. And for some people, that makes them very angry because they say it should be from Friday night to Saturday night. And I think what we are looking for is the spirit of the law.
Yeah.
And what is the spirit of the law? That we are to pull back, we're to interrupt our routine by saying, I trust God to provide for my needs with 6 days of labor, not seven, not 7.5, as some of us tries to squeeze in, but 6 days. And that seventh day, I'm going to trust God for my rest because he says that he is trustworthy. And to me, that is the spirit of what Sabbath is. And when people get legalistic, but Sabbath was created for man, not man for the Sabbath. And so, I just feel like we will fight over the silliest things. We will fight
Yeah.
over the silliest things. And this is a gift. And to say, but you're taking the gift wrong. I don't know. I'm very grateful for the nurses, for the doctors, for the emergency responders, for the teachers, for the flight attendants, for the pilots who have said, you know what? I'll celebrate my Sabbath on a Tuesday. It's cool. If you have a heart attack, somebody's here.
That's right. And in the Jewish tradition too, they don't do like we think of a start on midnight to midnight, like you
Right.
mentioned, you start from
Yeah.
afternoon to afternoon. I was working in an Adventist school, and we
Mhm.
would get out early on Fridays so we could be home before sunset. And then and we were working I worked 7 days a week if I wasn't careful because we
Yeah.
had so much going on. We were on the mission field, and I wanted to be 2 people. There was so much work
Right.
to do.
Right.
And I would get off school at noon on Friday, and that evening would be my rest time through Saturday at sunset, and then we had a Saturday night service and a Sunday morning service at our church.
Mhm.
And so that 24 hours was amazing to
Yeah.
get that just downtime for my brain and everything. And it was literally the only time in my week where I didn't have a commitment. And
Yeah.
I found it was such a blessing. And I had never separated it that way from
Mhm.
afternoon to afternoon. But oh my goodness, it really did make a difference for me. And I really appreciated that.
And for us, our brains that are focused on productivity, I had all day Saturday to get stuff done. I have Sunday night to get stuff done and prepared for the rest of the week. It just makes sense to me. And I'm so grateful for that. But that 24 hours where there's a lot of you can't, but no, you have to's. And that's such a gift.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. I like that. Well, tell us a little bit about the book. I love that it's more than just a cookbook, and that's what I keep telling people because I tell everybody about it. Um,
Oh, thank you.
yeah, happy to do it. So, tell us a little bit about why you created it the way you did. Why did you make it more than just a cookbook?
Yeah, so there is no lack of recipes out there, right? There is
True.
no lack, but these recipes all look great, but tell me how it's gonna get done. That's what I need to know. Tell me how it's gonna get done. So, when I was really looking at Sabbath in a new way, Roger and I made the decision, okay, soup on Sunday. Like, it's such a simple thing, but that takes the decision from 1,000 different options to, in my life, about 30. There are about 30 soups that I really like and I have recipes for and I know I can pull off. And so to be able to say soup on Sunday, because here's the thing, on I can make that soup on Friday or Saturday, and it's gonna taste amazing on Sunday. Soup only gets better. Of course, then by Wednesday, let's be careful, but we're gonna be fine for those few days, and it's just gonna get better and deeper and richer. So, whether you are making that homemade soup, or you're buying 2 containers at Costco on Thursday in order to heat up on Sunday. The decision is made, it's happening. And so I look at that and then I branched out from there. Okay, what could I do on Sunday night? So Sunday night is our big meaty meal. So we might roast a chicken or we might do a pot roast or something like that. But I'm going to make enough of that meal to have leftovers on Monday. And then on Sunday night, we are gonna have a family favorite. It's lasagna, it's chicken cacciatore, it's tacos, something like that. But I'm gonna make enough of that that we can have that on Wednesday night. So I'm making 3 meals, but all of them have enough leftovers that we can repurpose them. And that Saturday night chicken, I'm gonna turn into chicken quesadillas, or I'm gonna turn into chicken salad. So, like, I'm repurposing that Sunday night dinner of lasagna or cacciatore or taco. We're just having straight up leftovers. Like, we're keeping it easy. And that way, and oh, by the way, Tuesday night, leftover soup. You have just taken care of 5 dinners and a lunch right there. And then on Thursday, I'm gonna have something from Aldi's, Trader Joe's, one of those prepackaged foods that is
Okay.
just no brainer. Friday night, we're having pizza. I don't know what kind of pizza we're having, if we're gonna do takeout, if we're gonna do one in our pizza oven, but we're gonna have pizza. And so it's all decided. And just by making those 3 simple meals, we've decided a lot for our week. And Terry, I don't know about you. I'm the home cook. I assume you are as well for most of it. Are you?
Dave does a lot of it.
Oh, go Dave. All
Yeah.
right. So Roger does a lot of other things, but if something happens and I'm not able to cook, his fallback position is a French bread pizza. Now,
Oh,
which is fine every once in a while, but yeah. Anywho, so we love that he does a lot around here. So I'm not bashing him at all. But so you and I both work full time at our careers, and
mhm.
trying to do that plus meal planning, plus shopping, plus all of that. So I have a plan throughout the rest of the week too. Whereas Monday we meal plan, Tuesday we do an inventory or order the groceries, Wednesday we pick them up, Thursday is a prep day, and Friday I cook. And it's just a little bit every day, but we are set for the rest of the week.
I love that. Well, and it is so stressful, I swear,
Yeah.
trying to figure out what you're gonna eat all week long, and
Right.
it's like Dave complains about it all the time. If I just knew what we could do for the week, if we could plan it out,
Yeah.
and it would that's one of the things I loved about this was, "Hey, we have a whole plan."
Yes. There are 24 weeks worth of recipes because what's the most defeating question in the entire world? What's for dinner? Well,
Mhm.
then you tell people what's for dinner and they're like, "Oh." And it's like, "Really? Yeah, you've just inspired me to cook, right? Like,
Right.
this is what I wanna sacrifice for." And so, it's so funny. I was watching this video of a kid coming home after school. He goes, "You've just had a long day of school, and you have to come home to this, and it's a crock pot." And I'm like, "Dude," and what I loved about this video, it was actually a stitch of another video where there was a kid who was like, I don't know, 24, 25, because that's a kid. And he said, "Son, when you get to be my age, 24, 25, you'll be grateful for that pot of
Yes.
brown, warm stuff, because you didn't have to think about it, you didn't have to shop for it, you didn't have to cook it, you're just gonna be grateful." And I love that perspective change.
Yes, that's good. With our family, we have a lot of texture issues.
Yes.
And so I have to deconstruct a lot of food for our family and let
Mm,
everybody kind of build their own
right.
bowl or sandwich or whatever it is, just because, like, I love mushrooms. No one else loves mushrooms. Dave and I like corn in like our tortilla soup, but my daughter hates corn, and
Yeah.
my other daughter's allergic to corn. And so it's like
Yeah.
everything is like either I become a short order cook or
Right.
we deconstruct. And but that's easy to do with these recipes as well, is to kind of figure out what will work for the whole family or to deconstruct it to where each can build their own, and it works out, but it can be challenging, I can tell
Well,
you.
I think even without allergies or things like that, what is it? Little kids, their taste buds go crazy. We get frustrated that they don't want to eat, but they have so many more taste buds. Our taste buds are dying every day. And these poor little kids, you put something on them and it's like, "Ah!" So I have a lot of sympathy for the families who are trying to feed multiple people. And I get it. Like, you try to put a green pepper in front of me, I I'm done. It's I ugh. And by the way, I'm 57 years old. I think it's okay for me to say I don't eat green peppers. I think I figured it out, even though Roger thinks that there's something wrong with me. But can we, so build your own meals are a big gift to a
Yeah,
lot of people.
they really are. Makes it sane, so you don't have
Yes.
to be upset and drama, no drama. That's what I love
Yes.
about this, is it's a lot less drama in your
Yes.
life.
Yep, exactly.
Well, I also wanted to talk on our podcast, we talk a lot about discipleship. And
Mhm.
I know that you do a lot of ministry to help people who are recovering from clutter issues, and you coach a lot of writers who feel called to this as something God has placed in our lives and for us to do. How do you bring Christ into all the coaching you do and the different, even the decluttering lessons
Yeah.
that you do? How do you help disciple people along the way?
I think what I do is I find the common problem, and I feel like there is almost no problem that is not addressed by a loving God. And
Amen.
so when it comes to clutter, I look for the commonalities. Why do I struggle to get rid of these things? Why do these items have a hold on me? Jesus talked so much about our money and possessions.
Mhm.
And so this is not a surprise that we struggle with these things. And so I look to scripture, I look to, and I like to let people know God is not surprised by your struggle, and you are not the only one.
Yeah.
Because right now in our free group, we have almost 17,000 people. That's a lot of people with clutter issues, right? You are
Right.
not the only one. So when you can take away the stigma of like, well, God must be disappointed in me because I'm the only one who's going through this, then you can start to get to the heart of what is going on and some real healing in that. With writers, they want to write, but they also sometimes lack the discipline. And I know I have of that daily writing habit. So when we can say, hey, when we're in this together and we talk about things that are prevalent in like the ADHD community, body doubling, and saying we're going to sit in community together. So every problem is somehow addressed in, at least to my limited knowledge, in New Testament, but every solution is also addressed. So be in community. And so that's how I like to look at what we're struggling with and what the solutions are.
I love that, and I agree, that's what I always say, we really disciple as we're doing life together because
Mhm.
we're iron sharpens iron, and
Yeah.
if I've gone somewhere and I've learned something, I can bring you along with me, and
Right.
I see all of us kinda doing that in community in our different groups with the Red House and all of that. I think that's one of the things that makes it so powerful and so beneficial.
Yeah.
Um Okay, one more question about hospitality. How
Yeah.
does hospitality open doors for fellowship and discipleship?
Yeah. I think that when we demonstrate hospitality or reaching out of any kind, people want to know the why. Why are you being nice to me? Why are you doing this when maybe other neighbors haven't? And they may not ask you in that way, but I think most people are interested in the why. I don't be nice so that people will talk to me about God, but I believe I am nice most of the time, not always, most of the time, because God has changed my life.
Mm,
And so I can talk about the why. It's not, well, God saved me, so I'm having you over for dinner. But I'm having you over for dinner because I want to connect with you, or I see that there's a need, or God has given me this abundance that I can share with somebody else. And
Mhm.
a lot of people are perfectly content to keep their abundance to themselves. I will also say some of the nicest, most hospitable people I have ever met aren't actually followers of Christ. But
Mm,
I will say this, that I have never been treated to a meal in somebody's house. I have never been brought a meal without feeling loved.
mm,
And a lot of times that I will reach further than I normally would because God has changed my life. And I want to share that with other people. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to come to Christ, but I think about it this way. I was a missionary in Japan for just a year. I mean, I don't even know if I I was in Japan for a year under a missions program. I was teaching English as a second language. I was there for an entire year and 2 people accepted Christ. And I was like, okay, is this worth it? Is it okay? So, yes, it was worth it for the 2 people. But here's what I'll say, Terry, is that the pastor's wife said, "Kathy, you are just one of many Christians who are going to come along their path. And
mhm.
when they start to see the pattern of how God has changed people's lives, that is what's going to lead them to believe, not your fancy words." And I
I
thought,
love that.
"Isn't that amazing?"
That's good. Yeah.
First of all, it takes the scariness out of it. Like, "It's all up to me, it's all up to me." Well, no, God knows. God knows. God knows. And second of all, like, this is a community that we're bringing together, and if goodness is the trademark, then that's how I want Christ to be represented in the world.
Mhm. That's good. Well, and I always love the scripture that talks about one person plants, another waters, and God brings
Yes.
the harvest. And
Yeah.
so if I'm planting seeds, I'm happy.
Yes, exactly. I will be a part of any of that gardening process.
Yes. Yeah. It was so funny when we first went to Taiwan in 1984. We went
Wow.
there on a short-term mission trip. This was when Dave and I were just friends, and we shared our hearts out. We
Mhm.
sang concerts, we shared, we taught, handed out information, and we saw one person in a month. We were only there a month. Person come to Christ, and he was from Australia. He was Chinese,
Yeah.
but he was Australian. And when
Okay.
we first started talking to him, he said, always thought Jesus was a spice man. And I thought, what's a spice man? He meant
Oh.
spaceman.
Oh,
With
that's
his
so
cool
funny.
accent, it was
Yes.
spaceman. And so when we finally realized what he said, because we were from Oklahoma, um, then we were able to talk to him, and he did open his heart to Christ and chose to follow
Wow.
Christ. But then he had a girlfriend in every harbor or whatever. He was a traveling
Yeah.
person, and he says, I guess I got to get rid of all my girlfriends. That was the first thing he said. We didn't
Oh,
say it, he did. But it was just so
but
cute.
he knew.
He
He
did.
knew.
It was
That's
really
so
cute. But it
funny.
was like we had worked so hard that whole month, every single day, and to see one person come to Christ was just like, wow, this is
Mhm.
hard ground. And
Yeah.
we went back as full-time missionaries 15 years later,
Mhm.
and the whole soil had changed. There
Mm.
were sprouts, it was a harvest time, and we were there for about 15 years, and we saw thousands come to Christ in that amount of time. And
Wow.
it was just amazing to see, and I said we were in a missions meeting, prayer meeting, and I said, to be privileged to see what God has done in those 15 years with all the prayer, with all the missionaries continuing to work, and the local people who had come to Christ sharing their faith. It had caused that ground to be less hard and people to be more open to the gospel. And we were beginning to see a real harvest, and it was just amazing.
Mm.
So I never discount planting even a single
Yeah.
seed in that hard soil. You never know what's going to happen.
Mm.
So,
What an encouragement to all of us. What
yeah,
an encouragement. Yeah.
it really is encouraging. So I'm debating whether to talk about this or not because it's kind of off topic.
Okay.
But one of the things I appreciate about you is how you handle the haters. And and because I know a lot of people who listen to this podcast are writers, they
Mhm.
are doing their own podcasts, and they are on social media and everything. As believers, as those who are trying to create a culture of love and compassion,
Uh,
how do we handle the haters and the negativity that comes our way?
okay, so I feel like there are about 8 different answers for this. One of the things I do is I just let people's stinky attitudes hang in the air. And, like, I Terry, can we agree that some of the most miserable people we know are believers? And it's like, how do you do that? Like, it's like operating out of 2 different sides.
Yeah,
And there are lots of people who wanna tell you that you're doing this loving people thing all wrong. And it's like, you know what? As long as I'm showing up and trying and people are feeling the love, I'm okay with that. But I will say, I wish I was that person who's like, I'm just not everybody's cup of tea. And so that I I can say that. I don't always feel it because I
yeah,
am deep down a people pleaser. But I think it's really good to find your small group. Like, you and I are part of a mastermind together, right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
so when those things come up, we can have a safe place with people who know us where we can discuss those things and we don't have to feel so alone. I have another group as well, 3 friends who are also all writers, that when something is going on, they can either tell me, "Oh, Kathy, that's unhinged. That's all about them," or, "Oh, maybe you need to look at X, Y, and Z." Normally, they go with the unhinged part because they're my friends. But every once in a while, there are things I need to learn from that. And so, I do think, okay, is there something I need to see in this comment? And also, it's okay for me to say, "Oh, that hurt my feelings,"
Hmm,
'cause I've really, really tried, and that hurt my feelings. Terry, this is why I'm in writing and not politics, because I could not deal with that stuff on the day to day. I just could
yeah, I
not.
know. Me either.
But I do believe that as content creators, writers, we have to keep tender hearts, and tender hearts are problematic in the real world. But in order to be of help to people, you need to stay tender. So surround yourself with people who can take up arms when you can't, and understand that oftentimes God will fight your battles for you, that sometimes it's just best to stay. Hmm. A new approach that I've learned is I watch a wonderful content creator. She's a single mom and she goes to a food bank twice a month. And people, Terry, they just rip her apart. They rip her apart. They're like, she works full time. She's raising her daughter by herself and she goes to the food bank. And people are like, why don't you leave that food for somebody who actually needs it? I mean, they say the most horrendous things to her. And she's like, why, people will say, why don't you stop having kids and take care of the ones you have? And I unhinged crazy stuff. And what she does, Terry, she never comments on those people. She just puts those she'll have a video that goes up on Tuesday and people will say the craziest nonsense to her. She'll just put one of those comments up on her next video and just keep going. And what she's doing is she's just saying, you're crazy. You understand, right? And so then she'll start her video saying, just out here, with my 7 baby daddies, leeching off the food banks. And I mean, she makes a joke out of it because people are crazy. I have not risen to that level of pettiness, and I admire her for it because what she's doing is saying, you think you can say these things. But really, you know what? Most of us recognize this is crazy because the food banks often have too much food. And if you meet your food bank's requirements, then why are you not using the food bank? Terry, I was a single mom. It never occurred to me to use the food banks. And it breaks my heart that there might be single moms out there who don't know that they could be using those. And so I'm so grateful for that. I veered a little bit. Let me just be honest. I'm very passionate about this though, because I don't want you hurting my friends.
Mhm.
And when you say something unhinged to me, just know that there are people just like me. When somebody talks about my weight or when somebody talks about me being divorced or something like that, just know that there are dozens, if not hundreds of other people looking at that comment who you are commenting on them as well. And I defend those people. I don't like when people do that.
And I think you're right too. A lot of times these comments come from believers, and I've
Mm,
never understood it. It hurts more when it comes from a fellow believer, a brother
yeah,
or sister, and I don't think we protect ourselves as much because we're not expecting it from.
right.
But I do think a lot of believers have not found the joy of the Lord, and they are caught up in their own condemnation, and so I
Yeah.
think that they strike out from that place, and some are still in need of healing,
Mhm.
um, and
Yeah.
it's just rough. But,
Yeah.
that's always been the hardest part of ministry is when you have a brother or sister in Christ who is just so bent on causing misery, and I just
Yeah.
all we can do is pray. I mean, even if we did try to address what they're saying, they're not gonna receive it.
No. And Terry, I heard this so interesting. I heard this somebody say, "Do you take your wounds from somebody you don't admire?"
Mm,
And I had to sit with that for a while. And it's when people are behaving badly, that's usually not somebody I admire. So
mhm.
why would their wounds hurt me? Now, when a
Yeah,
friend comes to me and said, "I don't like what you did here," oh my goodness, it hurts me, not because I'm mad at them, because it breaks my heart that I would hurt somebody I love, intentional or unintentional.
yeah,
And so I'm going to listen to that person. I'm going to receive it. I'm going to see, is there something I need to change?
mhm.
But why do I take wounds from somebody I don't admire? Why would I change who I am because of somebody I don't admire that
Yeah,
doesn't walk in the way of Christ? No, not going to do it anymore.
that's good. I like that a lot.
A
Well, and what is it that Proverbs says? "The wounds of a friend
friend.
are
Yes.
helpful," and
Yeah.
I have this on my bulletin board up here, and it says, "Does this deserve my happiness? Am I gonna give away my happiness because of this?
Mm,
Is it true, and can I do something about it?"
right.
And then the last one is, "Can I accept it and do something in spite of or because of it?"
Mm,
And so if ever I'm confronting something like that, I have this little sticky note I always read
I
and
love
think through
that.
it, and it helps a lot. I don't know if I got that from you or someone else, but I
I
thought it
don't
was
think it was me. I
really
think
good.
it
Okay.
was from a very wise friend that wasn't
Yeah,
me.
it's good. Well, saying all of that, I hope that we can inspire people to, first of all, be healthy. If
Mhm,
we are unhappy, if we are cranky,
mhm,
where is that coming from? And if we can get our friends around us at the table or wherever and confront it and deal with it and find out why. And for a long time early on in my faith, I dealt with depression a lot.
mm,
And coming out of that took a lot of time and a lot of good Christian friends who would just let me wrestle with what I
mhm.
was struggling with. And a lot of what I was struggling with was I did not understand God's grace at all.
Yeah, yeah,
Even though I said I did, I believed in his
right.
grace and faith was what saved me. I was living a life of works and I never measured up because I was a total perfectionist. And
Mm,
man, when God set me free from all of that, I felt like I could fly.
yeah. It's
And
so true, right?
yeah, and I have people come up to me all the time and they say, "You're always so happy, you smile all the time. What's" I'm like, "I love what I do. I love everything
Mhm,
that I do. I'm so thankful to be in a place where I can do the things that just make my heart sing."
mm,
And, um, so I feel very blessed, but
yeah.
God brought me through a lot of garbage that I just needed to deal with that was not from him, and it wasn't the right way to be, and I look at some of the mistakes I made along the way where I did hurt friends,
Yeah,
unintentionally, but
right.
we just do. And
Yeah, but we're constantly if we are digging in and we are reading scripture and we are praying, the correlation has to be we get better. It doesn't mean our
Yeah.
lives have to get better, but we have to continue to be healed.
Yes.
And that is a gift. Is there anything better than seeing the healing in somebody who used to frustrate the heck out of you and now you say, "Oh my goodness, I have so much to learn from them." What a
Yeah.
gift.
Yeah. It's amazing. Well, this has been fun. I
Oh,
enjoyed this
Terry,
conversation.
thank you so much for inviting me into this space. I'm so grateful.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time and being here, and I appreciate you, and
Back
I
at you, friend.
we're so glad you joined us today, and I hope you were blessed by the conversation with Kathy. And again, if you want to say something or ask a question, you can go to my website, terryhillardbrown.com, and post a comment or question there, and we will get back to you on that. We love to hear from you. Remember that we are switching from Everyday Discipleship Every Day and Books That Spark into one podcast, Sparking Everyday Discipleship. And that will start in the middle of January. In the meantime, we're going to be on a break after this episode for just a couple weeks, and then we'll be back with the new podcast. I can't wait for you to hear what we're going to be talking about. We've got lots of great guests lined up for this next year. It's an exciting time, and we hope that you are encouraged, that you are challenged in your walk with God, and that you're empowered as a parent to help disciple your children and see them follow Christ with their whole hearts. And our prayer is always that we will be able to equip you and equip each other to walk by faith and to then turn around and equip this generation of believers to reach and equip the next generation of believers with everyday discipleship every day.